Hi, and welcome to my review of Sneeze by Naoki Urasawa. I picked up this collection of stories after reading Urasawa's masterpiece that was Mujurishi. I found that story so appealing that I wanted to see some of the other work from the mangaka. I also haven't heard too many people talking about Sneeze, so I figured it would make a good video as well as hopefully a fantastic read. There's something I love about manga, where the whole story or many smaller stories are included in one book. It's just nice to know that I have the whole thing in my hands and there aren't 1,000 volumes to collect and try to find. It's sometimes nice to just sit down with a cup of tea and enjoy a story in one sitting. But without further ado, let's get into the review of Sneeze. Sneeze is a collection of 8 stories, each of which are completely unrelated and are all created by Urasawa. Each of the stories tackles a completely different thing and have no common theme. The only thing linking these stories is the consistent quality found throughout Urasawa's works. The first of these stories is Damien, with an exclamation point. The story is about a man who spent all of his money on gacha and has a friend who can supposedly kill people with nothing but the power of his mind. They both get tangled in criminal activity, trying to make as much money as they can to get out of debt. It sounds simple, but the themes tackled in this story stretch from mystery to murder to never giving up and the love that a father has for his child. It's really amazing how much this story covers in so few pages. What I think is particularly cool about this story is that it's never really classified if Damien actually has any powers at all. To me, it kind of comes across like he's just a very lucky person and stuff just happens when he needs it to. So much is left a mystery, and yet enough is answered that you finish the story completely satisfied. It's great how the cast of characters range from really well-grounded gangsters to weird gacha addicts, and although it feels like they're from completely different worlds, they still feel welcome sat at the same table. The art is also fantastic, but that's no surprise. The first few pages are in colour and are really impressive and pretty, and the story is completely wacky. Obviously it's very short, and I feel this story could have been told in a longer format, but it is what it is. It's supposed to be short, and it's great because of that. The second story in this collection is Throw Toward the Moon, a story that again includes psychic powers that are never quite confirmed but heavily hinted at being true. In this story we follow our main character, who as a child comes across a starving old man. He gives the man an apple and saves his life, resulting in the old man rewarding him by telling him his future and giving him a series of vague directions that will lead to him winning a Pulitzer Prize. This story in my opinion tackles greed, as the majority of people in the story, even including the main character, only act for greed. Whether they want money, fame, or just a good time, everything is done for personal gain. There are a few twists and turns in the story that I really didn't expect, and even though it's quite the short story, I found myself on the edge of my seat till the very last page. The story just has Urasawa written all over it. I noticed that this author likes to play with the what if. It lets your mind continue on with the story a while longer after you finish the read. It's a really enjoyable experience. This story will certainly get you thinking about the art of storytelling, or at least it got me thinking about that. The third story is titled The Old Guys, and this story was certainly a strange one. I'm not sure if the point was lost on me, or if there was any point at all. It wasn't bad, and the art was done in a very unique way compared to the other manga that Urasawa has worked on. If I had to call it anything, it feels like a love letter to his future self. I don't really know what to say without spoiling this story, or if there's anything to really spoil. It sure got my head going and I was genuinely speechless, but for what reason I couldn't say. Though it surely made me appreciate the music of my youth and made me wonder about my ever-aging self. It really is a unique experience, but I feel so lost for words that I think I'll leave it there. The fourth is Henry and Charles, a story about 2 mice trying to get a slice of cake. It's a slapstick comedy sort of story that wouldn't feel out of place in a Tom and Jerry episode. It feels so weird to be right here in the middle of all these other stories. I'm not gonna lie, it was my least favourite in the collection, but it was completely in colour and very pretty to look at. But I don't have much else to say about the story. It did get me thinking about the order of these stories in the collection of Sneeze. I wonder if they all have some deeper meaning or if something can be drawn from that. I personally didn't get anything, but it certainly got me thinking about what it might mean to have a comedy in the centre of all of these otherwise quite deep stories. The fifth story is It's a Beautiful Day. The story revolves around the late Kenji Endo and talks of life on the road as a travelling musician. It was before he got famous, and it's a true story. I won't spoil the contents, but it feels so full of life. It's only a few pages, and yet I got so much good feels from reading this. As someone who was a gigging musician, it really feels like the sort of anecdotal story you would experience after a performance. But what I found truly beautiful about this story was it was told by Kenji Endo to Naoki Urasawa. There's this really heartbreaking and wholesome letter at the end of the story from Naoki explaining that he wanted to make this story a manga a long while earlier, but due to his commitments, he couldn't. He talks about Endo being very excited to read the manga about his story. However, sadly, Kenji Endo died before It's a Beautiful Day was created, and Urasawa apologizes for this. It's a harsh reality. There's so many things that we all want to do, and yet sometimes we forget the important things like honouring a friend's story. It's such a strange and beautiful story, and raw emotion just seeps out of the pages. This is one of my favourite short stories ever, not just in Sneeze. Following that masterpiece is Musica Nostra, and this is actually quite a charming story told firsthand by Urasawa. It contains a bunch of stories of Urasawa and his trip across America. It reads like a child talking about a holiday, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He just feels like he's so full of wonder and amazement, like a lifelong dream is coming true. And it must be said that if half the stuff that happened to Urasawa happened to me, I would probably be full of amazement as well. There's just so much personality in this. It's wholesome and calming, and brimming with joy and wonderment. I can't believe this man did so much. It's so utterly impressive, and it's so nice to see a window into his life. Story number 7 is Kaiju Kingdom, and it's one of the longer stories in Sneeze, and it's certainly one of the most over-the-top ones. There's a lot of topics and themes covered in this, from love to obsession, otaku culture and tourism. It even tackles the corrupt tourism industry. The setting is that kaiju attacks actually happen in Japan, and people from all over the world flock to see these attacks. We follow one of the kaiju fans on his trip from France to Tokyo, and watch as he develops beyond a simple fanboy into much, much more. It's a nice story. There isn't really anything too deep going on. I feel that it's a lot more shallow emotionally compared to the other stories in Sneeze, and it's just a lot more fun. It really feels like Urasawa just wanted to have fun and enjoyment out of this story because it's silly and brilliant in all the right ways. The ending is so ridiculous, I couldn't help but have a big goofy smile on my face. And that's a great word to describe Kaiju Kingdom, goofy. The last story, Tanshin Funin Solo Mission, took me a few moments to wrap my head around, and that's because I tried reading it the standard Japanese way, right to left, when instead it's the only story in this book that's supposed to be read left to right. It felt like a prank, to be honest. But anyways, the story itself is a short and sad piece of a space superhero guy and his home troubles. I really don't have much more to say on it than that, but it's got a good punchline, so it's a good read in my book. Overall, Sneeze is a collection of brilliant stories, each as odd and strange as the last. As soon as you think you find a connection between these stories, you'll be proven otherwise, and it truly captures the breadth of storytelling masterwork that Naoki Urasawa is capable of. From comedy to drama, there is truly no theme, no premise, no style that this man cannot perfect. It reads like the inner thoughts of a man whose mind often wanders, and I truly enjoyed my experience wandering with him. Well, that's that. A review of Sneeze with no spoilers, just a brief description, hopefully compelling enough to urge you guys to give this manga a read. I really couldn't recommend it enough. Make sure to tell me what you guys thought of this manga in the comments, and if you haven't read it yet, please go give it a go, and leave a like while you're there if you want. But this is Mesha Taylor, signing off. You guys have a good one.